Welcome back to Buy the House, Build the Home.
We're here. We're back. Another day, another podcast.
Guys, we're almost at the end of 2024.
Crazy.
I think it's completely insane. This year's flown by.
It really has. It's crazy.
It's been great, though. Like almost a full year of podcasting.
Wow.
We're
professionals at this point.
Sometimes it feels that way. Sometimes I'm like, what's happening?
Yeah, same. No.
But today we have a lot of things to talk about, but we really want to talk about cycles in life and rest. That was very strong on Betty's heart. So she's going to kind of dive into that. And then we're going to talk about how do we properly launch into 2025? Like, what are some of the habits that Betty and I are adopting for 2025 to make it the best year possible for us? So first, let's touch on rest.
Yeah, it's funny. We were contemplating this podcast and we were talking about 2025 and planning. And I was really taking it very specific to real estate. But as we know, we often can take this outside of real estate. But how seasonally in real estate, you have, your busier seasons, your spring and summer are usually hottest times. Yeah. And then you have your a little bit more slow times that come. And I know when you're used to being go, so many things happening at once, it can be really hard when it does kind of slow down. Because for me personally, I'm like, what am I doing? And your nervous system gets so on that adrenaline rush, and it's really not good for you.
Yeah.
And even if you
become addicted to it, hormonally, you become addicted to it.
And it's so important to take time to pause and rest. And I mean, even if you look at soil, if you just till the soil all the time, you deplete it of its minerals. And that's like us. And even in busy seasons, you have to carve out time for rest. And even before you make big decisions in real estate, sometimes if you have a crazy day, you have to take a minute and pause and breathe and go, okay, you need to clear the clear the chaos a little bit. And it's funny, I was on a little trip this last week for my birthday, and I brought this book, and it's called The Elimination of Hurry. And that's not easy for me because I really thrive on let's go.
Going.
But it's just also just really good to have that reminder, and especially this time of year. I think it for a lot of people with work, it slows down. There's also the crunch of the holidays and gifts and parties and all of the things. So it's also very rushed at the same time. And so I just wanted to remind myself primarily, but also specifically within the industry of real estate, how important it is to take time to rest and to refill your cup and to make sure that you're taking care of your sleep, your diet, you're working out, taking care of your physical body and your mind, right? Your mental body and your emotions, and taking time to process. I had a friend pass away last month, and then I had another friend whose husband passed away, and just taking time to emotionally process and grieve. And when you're just busy all the time, you really don't, and you do yourself a massive disservice. So
something that I was thinking of when you were talking is if we can learn the practice of rest, I wonder what that looks like in those busy moments then, where maybe you don't feel as rushed to make a really quick decision. Even if you're busy, even if you're going, you're able to go, okay, wait, I know this. I know how to get to this healthy place of making a decision out of rest, even if practically my day is stacked.
Right.
I think that'd be really interesting because I've always struggled with rest. I might get sleep, but my mind doesn't necessarily rest. And in those moments and times where I'm able to it actually happened this morning before the podcast. I had about an hour of I don't have to do anything right now.
Yeah.
And all of these creative ideas came to my mind. And I'm like, oh, they're just all stuck in there.
Right.
In the midst of going at full speed. So I agree. I think it's not just a rest. And this isn't what you were saying, but it's not just a rest of sleep. Because I think a lot of times when we hear rest, it's no, I'm getting 8 hours, or, oh, I don't work as hard on the weekends. But it's are you allowing your mind to truly just kind of disengage and shut off or play or
sleep and rest are two very, very different things. And I think they get confused with people, and it's like, oh yeah, no, I'm okay. Like I'm not like sleep deprived. Like when you have a newborn or you're, studying for a test that's coming up. It's like, no, rest. Very different than sleep. Sleep is, we need both.
Yeah.
And you really have to cultivate. I think rest is harder to make space for. Sleep, you have to. Your body will be like, okay, we got to do this, right? But with rest, you really don't. So you have to sort of be intentional about carving out time for rest. And that doesn't mean that you like sit on the couch necessarily.
Yeah.
But it does mean that you're quieting. And I do think that it produces a lot of creativity, and a lot of really high producing people will take like an hour in their day where they're just meditating, or they're slow because they know what's coming, and they're giving themselves an opportunity to gear themselves up so that they don't run too hard.
It's kind of like a picture of a slingshot for me when you do that. And I know people have said this over the course of time, so that's not a new picture, but I do see that even in the real estate industry, when we see it kind of slow down in this season and then it slingshots into the spring, I think it just allows people to kind of go back to their foundation and make sure it's set.
Right.
For what's coming. So that might be foundational daily, like what you were just saying, where a lot of these high producing individuals take an hour to like set their foundation so that they can run the rest of the day.
Right.
Or maybe it's a season of setting a foundation. And then you can go forward and build what you need to do there.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
Well, I think that segues perfectly into like building and launching for 2025. I would love to hear, what is one habit or mindset or way of being that you're going to pick up for next year?
Yeah, something that I try to always set before me for every year. It's really something that I it's a value of mine, and I don't ever want to put it down. But I do think it's important for me at the end of the year, and as I'm gearing into a new year, to put it again in the forefront of my mind. But that's just connection. Like, it's really important for me in order to do what I do and to thrive, and just as much as I need rest as I need connection. And that is with other real estate professionals, that's with attorneys, that's with, my clients, that's also with friends, that's also with family, right? And so that's something that I always try to set before me, is to make space for that, and not necessarily because of business planning. And so much of real estate is relational and connection building. And so for me, I always, and especially towards the end of the year, I start to gear towards, okay, it gets really busy. People are traveling. People have parties and holiday things. So I start to try to go into January, like, who are 5 people that I want to sit down with and have coffee with, right? Because it gets really busy and full. And if you don't start thinking ahead, then January comes and goes, and then all of a sudden it's not something that you've like really made a priority. So that's one of mine. What about you?
One of mine was connections as well. I think maybe in a little bit different way than yours. I have found there's been so much like seasonal shift for me in this past year, 2 years, where I'm just realizing that a lot of the people that I have been running alongside, maybe we're kind of going in different directions now. And so I'm really going to be focusing on making fresh connections with individuals that maybe have the same drive or the same desires or want to build at the same speed that I want to build, and kind of go after that, because I think it's so important to not stay just isolated in an island when you're growing. It does happen. Like, you kind of go from lily pad to lily pad, but that'd be one of my main things. But I'll probably be doing it in some of the same ways that you're doing it. Like, I'm going to start reaching out to people, coffees, walks. I've done a couple of like walks and talks is what I call them this year. And it's been so much fun to spend time with people while also doing something like productive for my body, not always just over food or just always over coffee or something like that.
Something expensive that costs money.
Yeah, it's actually been really fun to get to know people in that way. I also got involved in the city where I live. I think I'm going to find a tennis club. Shout out if anybody locally knows a great tennis club, but just kind of bring in some of those things that that I love to do as well, but connect people in those same lanes. So that would be another one, that habit of maybe like once or twice a week, really making an effort to connect with someone new and or someone that I just love and adore and make space for them.
And I would say, I feel like people don't talk about this a lot. You know, we can talk about relationships, breakups, you know, people going through divorces, but you do have seasonal shifts with your friends.
Yes.
And not everybody is going to stay going the same pace that you do. And people go different directions and people grow at different paces. Mm-hmm. And so sometimes it can feel hard to like, oh, like I want to be around someone that inspires me a bit more or something like that. And it can feel almost selfish, but it's really not. And there's statistics around if you're the smartest person amongst your friends, you're not growing. Yeah. You need to probably be the least smart.
It gets a little difficult.
Right?
Yeah.
And not that you like ditch people, but it is important to look at your friendships and also notice when they're shifting. And it doesn't necessarily mean that you're kicking anyone to the curb, but it does mean like when you have that in you of like, I want to make fresh connections. Like that's a really powerful thing that can bring new places and or new people and new places and new ideas and new thought patterns into your world that you wouldn't have had if you didn't. So I think that's a really powerful thing to do. And going into a new year, it's helpful to look at, okay, and some of it is just life shifting. Somebody had their third kid, somebody moved, somebody got married. And it can be really hard when you're like a loyal person to see it as a good thing, you know? And you have those people that stay in your life forever, but you're never the same, right? We change ever evolving people. So it's one of those things that I think people don't talk about enough is like, no, it's a part of life too. And it's a hard part of life, but it's necessary.
Well, and like you were saying, there's a lot of people that do stay in your life, but maybe the connection that you once had, it goes from maybe really close inner circle doing life all the time together to I get to see you every couple of months or every 6 months even, and still love them, adore them, want that connection, but you guys just aren't running the same race at the moment. So yeah, I love that. Okay, what else do you got?
Well, I think you were going to say your second one, right?
Oh,
You said connection. I thought you were saying we can go back to this, but we were talking about this earlier. So I was going to piggytail off of yours.
Oh, nice. I'll just piggytail off of yours.
Yeah. So we were talking about consistency.
Yes.
And being consistent. And I'm going to say my piece of that, which is a bit different than yours, but structure. Yeah. And having a bit more structure around my days that is consistent. Yeah. Because I don't have a 9 to 5 and I can just sort of make my day as I will. And I thrive off of that. I really thrive off of spontaneity and being able to drop everything and go show 5 houses. Right. Yeah. However, I want to implement more structure and be more consistent with that, of whether that being working out, meal prepping. That's something that I really struggle to do.
I think we both do.
Yeah. But I've gotten like this year, it's like, okay, on Sunday afternoons, I'm going to do this. And I say I'm going to, and then I do, and then I don't. Right. And so I just want to kind of add in even like intentionality in my calendar. Cause I've gotten to where I pretty much live by my calendar. Like if I don't put it in there, it's not a good thing because I'll accidentally double book or something. But just structuring out and being consistent. Like this is going to be once a week. This is going to be 3 times a week. This is going to be, and like if I don't get it in by a Thursday, having a calendar reminder going, get this in, because I do want to be consistent and not just necessarily within my business, but also with my business, right? Like things that I can touch points with clients, phone calls, weekly phone calls with people, sending out, little notes, like the things that are always in my heart to do, but kind of fall to the wayside. I'm wanting to really put a consistent structured plan in place to do as consistently as possible. So
yeah, I love that. Same thing for me. And I mean, honestly, you really touched on all of it, but consistency, it really does drive your life forward.
Yeah.
Like whatever you're consistent in. So hopefully it's forward and not backward.
Right.
Because we all have consistency.
Yeah.
We all have our habits that we do day in and day out, even if it's spontaneity. Like that's still a habit that's consistent. And so I feel the same way, definitely in my business. I've been doing a lot of business planning this last month, which has been fun to see how I want to structure my days. But also for me, I can run myself ragged. And so putting in consistent like play, consistent rest, the meal prepping, that, I think that'd be huge. Honestly, I just want somebody to come make all
same.
my food for me, or
Same.
can I pop a pill?
That's going to happen. I don't, maybe not pop a pill, but having someone do it, I'm like, that's something I will pay for. Like, come just meal prep for me and put it in the
But
fridge.
like eating is the absolute worst to me.
Oh, we
Like,
were
it
both talking about
just-
this. We're both the worst. Like, it'll be 3:00 and I'm like, I don't think I ate anything yet.
Yeah.
And I'm like, what am I doing? And of
Yeah.
course, you're way more productive if you like are fueled for your day.
Exactly.
So, oh my gosh. Yeah, we're going to keep each other accountable.
No, I love this.
year.
Let's do this. Sunday afternoons are perfect
That's
too.
right.
Like that's a perfect time to prep. But working out and then just consistency, not even in the meal prepping or the working out, but the health of the workouts, the health of the food. Because there's a lot of times where I am like, I am so tired. And then I think back on the week and I'm like, well, you didn't work out. And your meals have consisted of like a meat stick and or cereal because you just didn't care. You were going too fast. And like your body can't survive on that. It can't thrive on that. And your mind can't thrive on that.
Right.
Like not only physically I'm probably struggling, but mentally.
Yes. I heard a podcast the other day where this psychologist was talking about becoming who you want to be, right?
Yeah.
So it's like, if you want to be this type of person, I want to be a generous person. I want to be sober. He was taking it on all different things. He was like, you have to start your day and go, what would it look like if I were becoming
This
a sober person? What would my day look like?
Yeah.
And he even used the word becoming and not just like become, because you have to take steps to get there, right?
Yeah.
But he was like, what would that look like? And he's like, sometimes it's your mindset shift of like, okay. And then he's like, but today, if I'm becoming a sober person and that's really the end goal, then today I don't have a drink. Or if I have 4, I cut it back to 1. And he was really hitting on addiction.
Yeah.
But it goes back to what we're saying, right? Like being consistent with, who do I want to be? What kind of business do I want to have? What are my goals? And then how am I going to become?
Align my actions with that.
Correct. Exactly.
Yeah. No, I love that. Okay. So we have connections, really. It's kind of for both of us. Consistency.
Yes.
What else do you have?
Well, my third one for specific to this year was going to be education.
Okay.
I think for me personally, I've been doing this for a while, and I always have to take continuing education. I have to stay up to date, and I go to classes. And really, the last couple of years, I started really enjoying going to the classes, and whether I'm taking them online, and I used to be like, oh, I've got to get this in. I've got to take legal 1 and 2.
Yeah.
And now I'm like, oh, okay, I want to sit down and hear from a title company all about the survey. And I know these things, but it's really good to refresh your memory. So I really want to be consistent. And this is also playing into connections, right?
Yeah.
But around education and educating myself, there are so many different nuances with real estate, and every deal is different.
Yeah.
I tell people, I mean, you've never done one the same. And there's usually something that pops up that you're like, oh, and some of them are easier than others.
Yeah.
But I want to focus on that this year for my personal self. Just because I love when I learn things and know things and I can share them.
Yeah.
And I have friends, it's funny because I go to therapy and I have friends and they're like, you're kind of like my secondhand, like I get to hear what you're learning and what you're experiencing, and then I can then give it to them who
It's like secondhand therapy opposed to secondhand smoke.
Correct. Right. And they don't have the time or space or finances right now to go. And so they're like, I love that I get to sort of glean from you in some ways. And I'm like, yeah, I want to do that with others. And I want to be able to do that to, the people that I'm around. So that's probably my third.
I love that. So education. I think that's just important no matter what you do, who you are. Like, if you are stagnant, you're kind of moving backwards, honestly. So I love that. I think my last one that I want to touch on for me is play/health, because I kind of put them in the same category for myself. A lot of times when I'm in the thick of working, it like feeds my, I guess, work addiction. I don't know what to call it, but it feeds that, like, oh, I'm being productive, I'm making a difference, I'm doing something. But when I stop and play, a lot of times, even while I'm playing, I'm like, I should be doing this, I could be working on this, I could be doing that. But when I'm able to actually achieve play or rest, like we were talking about at the beginning, I feel like my heart and soul really come alive. Yeah. And I see my connections thrive, connection to my husband, connection to my child, connection to my friends, connection to even my own creativity. Yeah. It comes back alive. So while we were talking about consistency and our calendar and building in all these directions, one of the ways that I am going to build towards is just enjoyment and being present. So I'm going to try to put that into every day to a certain extent, but especially week by week. Like, hey, how do we actually turn off for an afternoon or something and go and do something that I love, opposed to just what's the next thing I can do to build, you know?
Right. And I think it's funny because I think everybody wants to say that they play and they like life is fun. But for most people, it's not. Mm-mm. And it's usually because of that very thing.
It's like survival.
Mm-hmm. And I heard something. It was like, especially if you're a driven, ambitious person, they were talking about entrepreneurs, and they were like, a lot of entrepreneurs, it's like a trauma response. Like you get into this place because of something typically from your childhood that you had to become this, or you were fearful of, I don't want to repeat my parents' bad mistakes with money, and I will never be that way. But what you pick up along with that is this mentality of I should. Yeah. I should do this. I should be more productive. I should have gotten this done today. I was just talking to someone who owns 3 businesses, and he was like, well, I should have done this and I should have done that. And I'm like, well, when does it stop though? Yeah. And it won't. And then you look back on your life and all you did was work. Yeah. And so an important part of being able to play is letting go of the should. Because it feels like play is not productive. But it actually is. It's actually one of the most productive things. And if you look at people, whether they get it at the front end of their life or the back end of their life. Yeah. When I talk to my 93-year-old grandpa now, and he was in the military and all of these things.
High producing individual.
High producing. He's gonna tell me now the most important thing is like letting his grandkids sit on his lap. Yeah. And, sitting across the table from his daughter, and no phones, nothing to do but sit and listen and be and tell a story and play a game. And, and that at the end of the day is what makes your life fulfilling. The other is what makes your life like fruitful in other ways. But you got to have it. You really do. And play is such a really underrated thing in our culture that is so important. And I think especially in the game of real estate, you gotta make it.
You gotta have fun in the midst.
Absolutely. It can be so much that it's like we gotta have time to just
That cracks me up. This is a little story before I go of like having fun in the midst of a real estate transaction. I showed a house the other day, and it was gated, and we did not pull our cars into the gated area. We just like put in the code, walked in, gate shut. We were there for almost an hour. Okay, so we come out, and we kind of walk up to the gate, and I was like, I didn't think about the fact that we don't have like our cars or like wait to probably make the gate open. And so the potential buyer, he saw like the little fuse box, and he lifted up the cover, and he's like, there's got to be a button here. And so he's looking, and I'm like, I'm prepared to jump this fence. Do you need me to jump this fence? And he's like, let's just see if we can find a button. And so we're like looking around, and we ended up finding this little gate so you can walk out. But we were laughing so hard because I was like, I was ready. I was in heels. Prepared. Yep. I was dressed to the nines, and I was like, I'm going to have to climb this wrought iron fence. But I think it was a fun moment of like, because real estate can be very serious. It's a huge purchase. There's just a lot of things to go in to take very seriously.
Yeah.
But we were just dying because I was like, well, you might see a house today. You might also see me fall. You know,
and
I don't know.
That could have been a very different situation because it could have been like super stressful and anxious. And how are we going to get out of here? My clients are going to think that.
Yeah.
And you just took it and you rolled with it and you made it. And then, I mean, I had a situation where we were going outside and the sellers were home and there's this huge dog in the backyard.
Oh, no.
And this huge dog starts running, and my client, so his wife and kid were inside, and we had just stepped outside, and he sees this dog running, and he literally picks me up and throws me in the house, and I like fell down on the. I mean, but he saved my life.
Yeah.
I mean, we don't know if the dog was gonna, but the dog was coming not in a happy, playful way, and it was a huge dog, and so we laughed, and I mean, to this day, they'll text me, and it was like the funniest thing ever.
It's bonding,
and I'm like, I've never had that happen again, but like amazing. I love that you picked me up and chunked me in the room. Like it was,
that's
and
impressive.
Then he closed the door. It was amazing. But it's one of those things like that makes a normal day or what could feel really stressful. He could have been like, I'm so sorry. You know what I mean? We just laughed about it.
Yeah.
And now it's like our joke, you know? So you have to have that. You have to.
That.
Yeah.
I love that. Well, we hope that this conversation around rest and just kind of what we are settling into for 2025 helps you and even gets you thinking about what's for you in 2025.
Yeah.
Because some of these things you might be like, look, I have rest down. I need to be productive. But just kind of look at those things. Start thinking now. I'm not really one to set like tons of goals anymore because I used to do that and I stressed myself out, and then when I didn't reach them I felt like a failure. But I do look at habits or ways that I can go, okay, who am I becoming? If I want to become this person, what are a couple of things that I can start shifting in my way? So anyway,
I love it.
Thanks for joining us today. We'll be back soon.
Bye.
Bye.